Captain Rex Tank Morrison had seen better days, better ships, and definitely better cargo assignments. The rusty bucket wasn't exactly living up to its name, it was more like dying down to it. Every bolt creaked with existential dread, and the coffee maker had achieved sentience just to complain about the water quality. "Tank, you magnificent disaster," came a voice from the lab section. "We've got a problem." Dr. Luna Vasquez emerged from behind a stack of specimen containers, her lab coat somehow still pristine despite working in what could generously be called a flying junkyard. She had the kind of no-nonsense expression that could make a black hole reconsider its life choices. "What now, Doc? Did the quantum flux capacitor decide to flux in the wrong direction again?" "The quantum flux capacitor isn't real, Tank. I made that up 6 months ago to get you to stop asking stupid questions about my equipment." Luna adjusted her glasses with the precision of someone who had explained basic science to idiots professionally. "We're receiving a distress signal from the luxury liner Cosmic Princess." Tank's pilot, Eddie Gearshift Kowalski, looked up from his control panel. "The Cosmic Princess? That's the fancy cruise ship with the 17 different species of pampered aliens who think humans are basically galactic janitors." 18 species, corrected Luna. "And yes, they do think we're custodians. Apparently being the only species that can figure out how to unclog an interdimensional toilet makes us the help." The galaxy had this funny way of categorizing species. The Centaurians handled diplomacy because they could discuss trade agreements for 17 hours without blinking. The Vorthak managed security because they looked scary and had natural armor. The Kristonians ran the banks because they could count to infinity in base 12 while calculating compound interest. And humans? Well, humans fixed things, cleaned things, managed the boring, practical stuff that kept the galaxy running while everyone else handled the important work. "So what's their emergency?" Tank asked, though he already suspected he didn't want to know. "Did someone forget how to operate the automated buffet again?" Luna's expression darkened. "Krex pirates. They've boarded the ship and taken hostages." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and Eddie muttering prayers to various mechanical deities. "Krex pirates?" Tank repeated slowly. "As in, the 8-foot-tall chitinous nightmare creatures with acid saliva and a hobby of collecting sentient skulls? Those would be the ones. And they want us, the glorified space janitors, to do what exactly? Polish their claws while they commit piracy?" Luna crossed her arms and gave Tank the look that had made graduate students reconsider their career choices. "They want us to help because, and I quote from their distress call, surely the human maintenance crew can sneak aboard and disable the pirates' ship while they're distracted with the real passengers." "Oh, that's rich. We're supposed to risk our lives crawling through ventilation shafts like space hamsters while they sit in their luxury suites." "Tank," Luna said with the patience of someone who had explained photosynthesis to houseplants, "we're going to help them." "We are absolutely not going to. We are going to help them because it's the right thing to do, and because if you don't change course right now, I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful world of vacuum exposure." Tank looked at his xenobiologist, noted the way she was holding what appeared to be a plasma cutter, and made the executive decision that discretion was the better part of not getting spaced. "Eddie, set course for the Cosmic Princess. And send a message to our insurance company. I have a feeling we're about to void our warranty." The Cosmic Princess hung in space like a wounded whale, its pristine white hull scarred with blast marks and docking clamps from the Krex raider ship attached to its side like a mechanical parasite. "Well," Tank observed, "it looks ominous." "It's supposed to look ominous," Luna said, running scans on her equipment. "That's the whole point of being a pirate. Poor visual design would undermine the psychological impact." Eddie maneuvered the rusty bucket to the ship's service dock, the one reserved for maintenance personnel and other necessary but unimportant beings. Even in a crisis, the luxury liner maintained its class distinctions. They boarded through the service airlock and immediately encountered chaos. Alien passengers huddled in corners while Krex pirates strutted through the corridors like armored nightmares on a power trip. The pirates stood 8 feet tall, covered in natural chitinous plates that made them look like insects that had discovered the joy of weaponry. Their mandibles clicked with amusement as they terrorized passengers who had probably never seen violence outside of carefully sanitized holodramas. "Oh, wonderful," squeaked a voice from behind an overturned table. A Zentorian diplomat named Flibbert emerged, his blue skin pale with terror and his 4 eyes darting in different directions. "The maintenance humans are here. I suppose you'll want to start by fixing the climate control? Because I must say the temperature regulation has been simply dreadful during this piracy situation." "Actually," Tank said, "we're here to." Silence. The roar came from Captain Vorthak, the lead Krex pirate, who appeared to be wearing enough weapons to outfit a small army. "Insignificant human servants. You will return to your custodial duties while superior beings conduct superior business." Luna stepped forward and Tank noticed something interesting happen. Her posture changed. Not dramatically, she didn't puff up or make threatening gestures. Instead, she simply stood straighter and got very, very still. It was the kind of stillness that preceded either profound wisdom or spectacular violence. "Excuse me," she said in the tone of someone who had dealt with classroom disruptions for 15 years, "but you're being unnecessarily loud." Vorthak's mandibles clicked with what might have been laughter. "Human creature. You dare." "I'm not done talking," Luna interrupted, and something in her voice made even Tank take a step back. "You've made quite a mess here, and frankly, your behavior is completely unacceptable." The Krex captain seemed confused by this response. In his experience, smaller creatures either cowered in terror or died quickly. They didn't critique his deportment. "Foolish mammal. You know nothing of Krex superiority. Held the power of our greatest warrior." Vorthak activated something on his wrist communicator and spoke in rapid, clicking Krex dialect. A moment later, the ship's deck plating vibrated with heavy footsteps. "Oh no," whispered Flibbert. "Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. He's calling Grimjaw." "Who's Grimjaw?" Eddie asked, though his hand was already moving toward his sidearm. "Grimjaw," Flibbert explained in hushed tones, "is their war beast. 12 feet of pure predatory evolution, bred specifically for intimidation and violence. Legend says he once killed a Vorthak battlecruiser by headbutting it." "He headbutted a spaceship?" Tank asked. "Well, the legend might be somewhat exaggerated, but the point remains he's absolutely terrifying and completely unstoppable." The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by a low growling that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. Passengers scattered to hiding spots, and even some of the Krex pirates looked nervous. Then Grimjaw appeared. He was, Tank had to admit, genuinely impressive. 12 feet of muscle and chitin, with claws that could probably open cans or disembowel enemies with equal efficiency. His head was elongated and filled with teeth that belonged in a museum of evolutionary overachievement. His eyes glowed with predatory intelligence, and his growl suggested that violence was not just a possibility but a recreational activity. Grimjaw locked his gaze on Luna and began stalking toward her, his movements fluid and terrifying. Luna sighed and checked her wrist chronometer. Grimjaw charged. It was a sight to behold. 12 feet of weaponized nightmare hurtling across the deck with claws extended and jaws gaping wide enough to accommodate a small vehicle. His roar shook the bulkheads and set off at least 3 different safety alarms. This was evolution's answer to the question, what if we made something specifically designed to end other things? Luna stood perfectly still and waited. Tank started to move forward, some deeply ingrained human instinct screaming at him to protect his crew member, but something in Luna's posture stopped him. She wasn't frozen with fear. She wasn't preparing to dodge or fight. She was waiting with the patience of someone who had seen this exact behavior before. Grimjaw was 3 feet away when Luna turned her full attention to him. She didn't shout. She didn't make threatening gestures. She simply looked at him with the expression of a middle school science teacher who had just caught someone putting gum in another student's hair. It was, Tank realized later, the most devastating weapon in the human arsenal, the look. Not just any look. This was the specific look that said, I am not angry, I am disappointed, and you should be ashamed of yourself. It was the look that could make a grown adult remember every poor decision they'd made since kindergarten. It was the look that transcended species barriers and spoke directly to the universal concept of you are in trouble with the authority figure. Grimjaw stopped so abruptly that his momentum carried him into a confused slide. His roar cut off mid-bellow, replaced by a sound that could only be described as perplexed whimpering. "That's enough," Luna said quietly. The war beast sat down. Not gradually, not reluctantly. He sat down immediately, like a dog who'd been caught stealing food and knew he was about to get lectured about proper behavior. The entire corridor fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the sound of several alien jaws dropping. "Now," Luna continued in the same calm voice, "I need everyone to stop this nonsense immediately. You're disturbing the other passengers. You're making a mess of this lovely ship. And frankly, you're all behaving like children who've missed their nap time." She turned her attention to the other Krex pirates, who had been watching their ultimate weapon get domesticated by a human scientist. One by one, they began backing away from Luna's steady gaze. But Vorthak started to protest. "Did I say you could speak?" Luna asked, and the Krex captain's mandibles snapped shut so quickly they made an audible click. Luna began walking slowly through the group of pirates, her hands clasped behind her back in the universal posture of an authority figure conducting an inspection. The Krex beings who had terrorized 17 different star systems parted before her like water. "Let me explain something," Luna said conversationally. "Piracy is antisocial behavior. It's disruptive, it's inconsiderate, and it reflects poorly on your species as a whole. Now, I understand that you might have some legitimate grievances or resource needs that led to this career choice, but terrorizing civilians is not an appropriate solution." Grimjaw whined softly and lowered his head in what appeared to be shame. "I want everyone to think very carefully about their choices," Luna continued. "Because right now, you have an opportunity to resolve this situation peacefully and return to your ship with your dignity intact. The alternative is that I become very, very cross with you. And trust me when I say that nobody wants to see what happens then." Tank watched in fascination as the most feared pirates in this sector of the galaxy shuffled their feet like schoolchildren called to the principal's office. Vorthak was actually wringing his claws together nervously. "This is impossible," Flibbert whispered. "Krex warriors are apex predators. They don't submit to anyone, especially not." "Not what?" Luna asked pleasantly, and Flibbert's diplomatic training kicked in just in time to prevent him from finishing that sentence. "Not anyone who isn't prepared to demonstrate superior force," he amended quickly. Luna smiled, and Tank noted that even her smiles had an educational quality to them. "Force isn't the only kind of strength, Flibbert. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be intimidated by someone else's poor behavior." She turned back to the pirates. "Now, who wants to explain to me exactly what grievances led to this dramatic and antisocial display?" "You see," Luna said, settling into what Tank recognized as her lecturing mode, "the fundamental issue here is that you're all operating under a misunderstanding of pack hierarchy." The aliens, both pirates and passengers, stared at her with the confused expressions of students who'd expected a simple math quiz and instead found themselves in advanced theoretical physics. "Pack hierarchy?" Vorthak managed to ask, his earlier bluster replaced by genuine curiosity. "Basic social dynamics," Luna explained, pulling out a portable holoprojector that she used for her xenobiology presentations. "Every social species develops systems of authority and submission. The problem is that you've all been thinking in terms of physical dominance, which is frankly rather primitive." She activated the projector, displaying a simple chart. Physical strength is just one factor in establishing authority. What you've encountered here is something your species has never experienced before: disappointed authority figure energy. "Disappointed authority figure energy?" Flibbert repeated, taking notes on his diplomatic pad. "It's a uniquely human evolutionary adaptation," Luna continued, warming to her subject. "You see, humans are one of the few species that developed complex social structures around education and child rearing. Our survival strategy involved not just protecting our young, but actively teaching them to make better decisions." Tank suddenly understood why Luna's presence had such a profound effect on everyone around her. You used to be a teacher, didn't you? A middle school science teacher for 15 years before I went back to get my xenobiology doctorate, Luna confirmed. And let me tell you, if you can maintain classroom discipline with 30 12-year-olds who've just learned about chemical reactions, a few overgrown space pirates aren't particularly challenging. She gestured toward Grimjaw, who was still sitting obediently nearby. The Krex breed their warriors for physical intimidation, but they've never encountered anything like human maternal educational authority. It's a completely different type of dominance assertion. But Grimjaw is a war beast, Vorthak protested weakly. He's been trained since hatching to show no submission to any creature. Has he been trained to deal with someone who's genuinely disappointed in his behavior? Luna asked. Because that's what I'm projecting right now. Not fear, not anger, but the deep sadness of someone who expected better. The war beast made a soft keening sound and lowered his head further. Luna patted him gently on what might have been his shoulder. It's all right, Grimjaw. We all make poor choices sometimes. The important thing is learning from them. Tank watched in amazement as the most dangerous predator in known space practically melted under Luna's approval. This is unprecedented, Flibbert whispered, his note-taking becoming increasingly frantic. The implications for interspecies diplomacy are staggering. It gets better, Luna said cheerfully. Watch this. She turned to the group of Krex pirates who had been terrorizing the ship. I need everyone to line up against the wall, please. They did. Immediately. Without question. 8-foot-tall armored nightmares arranged themselves in a neat row, like they were waiting for recess. Now I want each of you to think about what you've done wrong today, and how you could have handled this situation more appropriately. The pirates actually began discussing their mistakes among themselves, their clicks and chittering taking on an almost confessional quality. Eddie leaned over to Tank. Is she putting them in timeout? I think she's putting them in timeout, Tank confirmed. Luna clapped her hands together, and everyone, passengers, pirates, and crew immediately gave her their full attention. All right, everyone. We're going to resolve this situation like civilized beings. That means talking through our problems, finding mutually acceptable solutions, and treating each other with respect. She looked around the corridor with the satisfaction of someone who had just restored order to a chaotic classroom. Now, who wants to tell me what this was really about? Vorthak raised one claw tentatively, like a student asking permission to speak. The Galactic Trade Federation has been restricting access to Krex territory. Our people are facing resource shortages, and peaceful negotiations have been unsuccessful. Luna nodded. So this is essentially a resource management problem complicated by poor communication and inadequate diplomatic representation. Well, Flibbert interjected, the Krex don't exactly have a reputation for diplomatic subtlety. Because nobody ever taught them effective communication strategies, Luna pointed out. Their entire cultural development has been based around intimidation displays, which are completely ineffective when dealing with species that don't respond to physical threats. She turned back to Vorthak. Have you considered alternative approaches to resource acquisition? Joint ventures, for instance, or skill-sharing agreements. Tank realized he was witnessing something genuinely historic. Not just the first successful peaceful resolution of a Krex piracy incident, but quite possibly the invention of an entirely new form of interspecies relations based on treating everyone like they were capable of better behavior. This is going to change everything, he muttered. Luna heard him and smiled. Only if we handle it properly. Now let's discuss some practical solutions to these resource problems. What followed was the most surreal negotiation in galactic history. Luna had essentially turned a hostage crisis into an impromptu seminar on conflict resolution, complete with visual aids and group participation. Now, Vorthak, Luna said, consulting her notes, you mentioned that your people have advanced expertise in metallurgy and mineral extraction. Is that correct? Yes, the Krex captain replied, still standing at attention like a student called upon to answer a question. Krex techniques for deep core mining are superior to most galactic standard methods. Excellent. And Flibbert, The Centaurians manage most of the trade route negotiations, don't they? Indeed, Flibbert confirmed, his diplomatic instincts taking over despite his continued bewilderment. We have established contracts with 17 different shipping federations. Perfect. Luna made another note. So what we have here is a classic case of complementary skills being wasted due to poor communication channels. She turned to address the room full of pirates and passengers. Instead of all this dramatic piracy business, which is frankly exhausting for everyone involved, why don't we discuss setting up some legitimate trade partnerships? One of the younger Krex pirates clicked his mandibles uncertainly. But we are warriors, not merchants. Who says you can't be both? Luna asked. Some of the most successful business ventures in human history have been led by people with military backgrounds. You already have discipline, strategic thinking, and the ability to work as a team. Those are valuable corporate assets. Tank watched as Luna systematically dismantled every objection the pirates raised. Resource shortages? Joint mining ventures could benefit everyone. Cultural pride? Nothing wrong with being proud of your heritage while also adapting to changing circumstances. Fear of being seen as weak? Any species smart enough to master interstellar travel was smart enough to recognize strength comes in many forms. But what about our reputation? Vortak asked plaintively. The Krex are known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. If we become traders and negotiators, what will people think? They'll think you're smart enough to evolve beyond simple intimidation tactics, Luna said practically. Which, frankly, is a much more impressive reputation than those beings who throw tantrums when they don't get their way. Grimjaw made a soft rumbling sound that might have been agreement. Plus, Luna continued, there's nothing stopping you from maintaining your warrior traditions while also developing diplomatic and commercial skills. Some of the most respected species in the galaxy have multiple cultural facets. She gestured toward the passengers. Look around this ship. You have Centaurians who are both diplomats and artists, crystalline beings who are both mathematicians and poets. Evolution doesn't mean abandoning your heritage, it means adding to it. The shift in the room's atmosphere was palpable. Instead of tense standoff between predators and prey, it was becoming something more like a workshop on career development. So Luna said briskly, let's talk practical details. Vortak, I want you to return all stolen goods and pay for any damage to the ship. Consider it a good faith gesture and an investment in your species' future reputation. But we need those resources, which you'll have access to through legitimate trade agreements that benefit everyone involved. Think long-term strategy, not short-term gain. Vortak considered this, his mandibles clicking in what Tank was learning to recognize as the Krex equivalent of thoughtful humming. This could work. But the Trade Federation will never trust us. They will if you have proper representation. Flibbert interjected, his diplomatic instincts fully engaged now. I could serve as an intermediary, help establish initial agreements. See? Luna said with satisfaction. Solutions, not problems. This is what happens when people actually talk to each other instead of just roaring and threatening. She looked around the room with the expression of a teacher whose class had finally grasped a difficult concept. Anyone else have concerns we need to address? One of the passengers, a crystalline being who had been cowering behind an ornamental plant, raised a tentacle. What about security? If the Krex stop being pirates, who will protect the trade routes from actual criminals? Luna smiled. What makes you think they're stopping being security experts? They're just changing their business model from piracy to private security contractor. The room fell silent as everyone processed this idea. That's brilliant, Flibbert breathed. The Krex become the system's protectors instead of its threat. It's win-win, Luna agreed. They get the resources they need, the trade routes get better protection, and everyone benefits from increased stability. Vortak stood straighter, and Tank could see the warrior's pride reasserting itself in a healthier way. My people would be honored to serve as guardians of galactic commerce. Excellent, Luna said, making final notes on her pad. Now I think we can call this crisis resolved. Everyone's getting what they need, no one's getting shot, And we've all learned something valuable about the power of effective communication. She looked around the room with satisfaction. Class dismissed. 3 months later, Tank was beginning to think that saving the cosmic princess might have been the worst mistake of his career. Captain Morrison, the holographic projection of Admiral Krex, announced, "The Galactic Security Council has another situation that requires your unique expertise." Tank sighed and looked around the bridge of the Rusty Bucket, which was no longer quite as rusty thanks to their recent influx of consulting fees. "Let me guess, another species having behavioral problems that normal diplomacy can't handle?" "The Vortak have established a highly successful private security network," Admiral Krex confirmed, "and 3 other warrior species have requested similar educational interventions." Eddie looked up from his control station, where he was reading a news article about the Krex economic miracle. It says here that Vortak's security company just signed a 10-year contract to protect the entire Centauri trade corridor. "And Grimjaw got promoted to Director of Threat Assessment," Tank added. "Apparently, his ability to intimidate actual criminals while remaining completely docile around legitimate traders makes him ideal for the job." Luna emerged from her laboratory, where she'd been cataloging samples from their latest diplomatic intervention. She looked tired but satisfied, like a teacher at the end of a successful but challenging semester. "Are we talking about the Vortak situation?" she asked. "Because I've been reviewing their cultural files, and honestly, it's just another case of a species that never learned proper conflict resolution techniques." "The Vortak," Tank said slowly, "are 12-foot-tall crystalline beings whose idea of negotiation involves sonic attacks that can shatter titanium." "So they're loud," Luna shrugged. "I've dealt with loud before." The communication system chimed with another incoming message. Then another. And another. Tank watched the queue fill up with requests from various species and star systems, all requesting the services of the human who can tame anything. "Dr. Vasquez," Admiral Krex continued, "your reputation has spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Union would like to offer you a formal position as Director of Interspecies Behavioral Modification." "That's a very flattering title," Luna said diplomatically, "but I'm quite happy with my current job, thank you." "The salary would be substantial." "I'm sure it would be. But I didn't become a xenobiologist to spend my time traveling around the galaxy putting various species in timeout. I have research to conduct." Tank grinned. "What she means is, she'll consider it if they let her bring her specimens and set up a proper lab on whatever ship they assign us. And they provide full funding for my research into interspecies communication patterns," Luna added. "This whole experience has given me some fascinating ideas about how different evolutionary pressures affect social hierarchy recognition." Eddie pulled up another news article. "Hey, look at this. They're calling you the Human Alpha Doc. It says you've revolutionized interspecies relations and established humans as the galaxy's premier diplomatic troubleshooters." "Human Alpha," Luna repeated with obvious distaste. "That's ridiculous. I'm not establishing dominance over anything. I'm just treating everyone like they're capable of behaving better." "Which apparently no one had ever tried before," Tank pointed out. Another communication chime indicated a priority message. Tank accepted it and found himself looking at a very familiar chitinous face. "Captain Morrison. Dr. Vasquez." Vortak's image appeared on the screen, his mandibles clicking with obvious excitement. "I bring greetings from the Krex Trading Confederation. We have a proposal for you." "Let me guess," Luna said. "Another species needs some behavioral adjustment?" "The Skarn hegemony has been raiding shipping lanes in the Outer Rim," Vortak confirmed. "Normal diplomatic channels have been ineffective, and military intervention would be expensive." "And you want us to go have a talk with them," Tank said. "We would be honored to provide transport and security support," Vortak said. "Grimjaw has been specifically requesting the opportunity to serve as your assistant again. He found the experience most educational." Luna considered this. "The Skarn are the hive mind species, aren't they? Collective consciousness, no individual identity recognition?" "That's correct," Vortak confirmed. "Interesting." I wonder if maternal authority translates to hive mind psychology. Luna's scientific curiosity was clearly engaged. It would be a fascinating test case. Tank looked around his bridge, noting the improved equipment, the steady income, and the growing reputation that was making the Rusty Bucket one of the most sought-after ships in the galaxy. Then he looked at Luna, who was already making notes about hive mind behavioral patterns. "All right," he said finally. "But we do this our way. No military escort, no weapons, no dramatic confrontations. We go in, Dr. Vasquez, whatever conversation needs to be had, and we all come home in time for dinner." "Agreed," Vorthak said immediately. "The Krex Confederation trusts your methods completely." After the transmission ended, Eddie turned to Luna. "So, Doc, any idea how you're going to handle a hive mind?" Luna smiled with the confidence of someone who had spent years dealing with collective misbehavior. "Eddie, have you ever tried to manage a middle school cafeteria during pizza day?" No. "Well, I have. And let me tell you, 30 kids acting like a collective organism focused on a single goal is excellent preparation for this kind of situation." She headed back toward her lab, then paused at the doorway. "Tank, set course for the outer rim. And make sure we have plenty of coffee. Something tells me this is going to require some serious patience." As the Rusty Bucket changed course toward their next educational intervention, Tank reflected on how drastically their lives had changed. They'd gone from being the galaxy's janitors to being its behavioral specialists, all because Luna had refused to be intimidated by someone else's poor behavior. From the lab section came a familiar rumbling sound. Grimjaw, who had apparently decided to take up permanent residence as Luna's research assistant, was helping her organize specimen containers with the careful precision of someone who'd learned that proper behavior led to approval from the authority figure. "You know what the really funny part is?" Eddie said as he plotted their course. "What's that?" "They still think we're just the maintenance crew. We're revolutionizing interspecies relations one lecture at a time, and they still see it as humans doing their usual job of fixing things that are broken." Tank laughed. "Maybe that's exactly what we are. The galaxy's behavioral maintenance specialists." Another communication chime indicated yet another request for their services. Tank accepted it automatically now, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, there was probably another species that had never learned the simple truth Luna had been teaching for years. Most problems could be solved if people just stopped being ridiculous and started talking to each other like civilized beings. And if they couldn't manage that, well, there was always the look.